You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, this is Paul Stefan, and welcome to another edition of Maryland Politics. Our guest today is Kevin Caldwell, a candidate for the District 6 congressional seat in the state of Maryland. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, if you could, please tell us a little about your background and how you feel that that background can translate into being an effective public servant.
No problem. I come from a lower middle class background. Dad is a retired shipyard worker and a two-time Purple Heart recipient in Vietnam. My mom is a farm girl from Georgia, and my parents divorced when I was fairly young. So
okay.
I was raised by a single mother.
Okay.
I've done everything for a living, from dishwasher to student of science to musician, Department of Defense contractor in the satellite communications field, and I'm also a veteran of the United States Army. While I served in the Army, I was the legal liaison between the Judge Advocate General's office and our command group. I also served in a diplomatic fashion as part of the four-star commanding general of the United States Army Europe, where I served in a diplomatic fashion all the way from Moscow to Morocco. So it's not any particular one thing that I think that translate into being a public servant, but it is my service overall and coming from the common citizen's background. And in Congress, I will serve the people adhering to the same core values that I did when I served them in uniform.
Okay.
Honor, duty, integrity, and selfless service. That is my promise and vow to the citizens of the 6th Congressional District.
Well, that's great, because some people would say, hey, he's ex-military, that you'd think he'd be more right-wing or Republican.
Well,
but not in your case.
Well, I think a lot of us, and I have been, while I was in uniform, I served in Iraq for a very short time. But as a Department of Defense contractor, I lived in both Iraq and Afghanistan for almost 3.5, 4 years.
Wow.
And I've been through the villages. I was embedded directly with the Iraqi army.
Oh, okay.
So for those of us that have been there and seen war, we're really the last people who want to send any future generations into it.
Because I know you talk a little bit about military and not being, of the United States not being in any war zones in which we're not directly, involved or somewhat.
Well,
we shouldn't just intervene just to intervene.
No, there should be a clear United States interest and an interest of we the people, not corporate America. And there's a big difference between the two for sure.
I can imagine. There's a lot of contractors that were even over there fighting. I guess we'd almost call mercenaries, but they were contractors, that were hired guns, literally, I think. Now,
there were some of those, yes.
Yes. Well, in the District 6, it seems as though, and any libertarian in the state of Maryland, or maybe anywhere in this country, has an uphill battle. So what is it that you think you can do to capture the interest of the voters?
Someone said this to me just the other day, wow, you have a really hard road. And it makes me think back to some famous words by a president. We went to the moon because it was hard, because it did seem impossible.
Right.
And when I started, now I've never been in politics before, so this is my first venture into the arena of politics. But the things that made me want to go into it is, we all know that Congress, at least in the federal level, does not represent the interest of you and I, the people. And I think everyone knows that. I think everyone can tell that they have served to implement the agenda of those that they have taken over $34 billion from in just the last decade.
Wow.
And so that we're talking corporate lobbyists, the special interests, Wall Street and K Street. I think no matter what party you're in, Democrat or Republican, that isn't hard to see. So it is a bit of a hard road, but I think Americans may be coming around to the idea that they are very aware that they're not being served in Congress. And let me make it clear, I'm not looking for the Democrat way. I'm not looking for the Republican way. I'm not even trying to establish the Libertarian way. I'm trying to find the right way, a practical, sensible way that works for all of us in the best possible system that we can have, We already have the framework for it. So I think if we can get out of the ideological arguments of everything and come to just practically what works. We all want the same things, I believe. We all want affordable, available, and quality health care. We want a world-class education system. We all want the same things regardless of party. And when we were speaking, a few minutes ago off camera, I said, I think the argument comes down of how do we get that?
Right.
And we can either have a moral commitment to make sure that the resources that we use for the public good, i.e. for providing public services, are directed to those who use them in the most effective, efficient, and responsible way. Or we can have an ideological commitment to protecting government's control of the resources, regardless of the results that their solutions provide to us or produce for us.
Right.
And that is my main message to whether you be a Democrat or a Republican or what party. I'm not about the party, I'm about the results for Americans. I care more about the outcomes for individuals than I do about protecting the ideology.
Okay. I mean, part of that is to say you're asking voters to kind of put the labels aside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I talked about this. There aren't enough libertarians in the state of Maryland to elect anyone, dog catcher, much less congressman.
Right.
So I'm hoping that people can see past it. And I'm hoping we're getting at the point where we're ready to get past this party politics. Because if we look at our history, and I've been around since the late Reagan years, I'm 49 now, but one party eventually takes over one side. They either own the House, the Senate, the presidency, all of them at one time. And all we've gotten throughout this history of is when they control it, nothing changes. And then when the other party controls it, well, it was that party's fault. And everything's back to that party's fault. When George Bush was in office, it was the Democrats who were obstructionists. Then when President Obama was there, it was the Republicans who were the obstructionists. Now we have President Trump in. And now everybody's an obstructionist, the Republicans and Democrats. They've all had opportunities to fix the issues that we are facing today. And none of them have done it. So I would ask the voters to look at the history of what they have done. Where are the results that these two parties have produced? And we need to hold them accountable for that. Nothing will change in Washington. The politicians have no reason to change as long as we keep electing those from those two parties. It is our responsibility to change it. And I am giving my fellow citizens in the 6th Congressional District the opportunity this election to send someone to Congress who is only beholden to the citizens of the 6th Congressional District, not a party leadership or any other entity. So I hope I can get that message out enough, and I hope that people care enough too. We've all heard the conversations. If we could just get someone else in here, we could fix some of these problems. Well, in this district, this election, they'll have that choice. So we shall see if I can communicate that enough to them.
Because I was going to say, I mean, when you say you can run and know, for example, that odds are long, or that you can't win, and the question is always, then why run?
I understand probabilities. I have a science background, so I can do probabilities. But just because the probability is low doesn't mean it's impossible.
True.
And I remember when I started out on this, some of the people, in fact, I remember reading something for new candidates. And it said, it started off with a paragraph or so saying, well, don't plan on winning, don't do this. And I went to him, I said, you need to change this. I go, if I don't believe I can win, then how can I convince anybody else of that? And I understand probabilities, but I believe this district is winnable. I really do. And I think a little bit of this, in truth, is also, America itself is an experiment. Mm-hmm. And so is my candidacy. So if given the opportunity to put the established, because that's what they're going to get. We're going to get an establishment Democrat and an establishment Republican. This election, the voters will have a different choice. So we shall see. But we'll do everything that I can throughout the district and work and try to get the message out and give the voters somebody who's intelligent enough to do the job, who's also competent enough You do not need to be from some elite class or some Ivy League school or even one of the wealthy zip codes from Potomac to serve the people well in Congress.
Because, I mean, with the Democrat who's the incumbent now, do you feel that he is vulnerable? Because I think he's only a one-term
There is no
congressman,
incumbent.
isn't he? Oh, I thought that was the incumbent.
No. John Delaney is running for president in 2020.
Oh, that's
So
what it is.
no matter who gets elected from the 6th congressional district,
They're all new.
will be.
So that makes it, it's an open playing field.
It's an open playing field.
Well,
Now
there you
that
go.
still doesn't. It improves everyone's probability a little bit. Mine even a little bit more, in the sense of when you're already starting at the bottom of the barrel, anything going in the other direction is up, no doubt.
Well, sure.
But as freshman congressman goes, they'll either have the chance, the 6th congressional district, any freshman congressman that serves there will either become part of the party apparatus and politics as usual, or you can have someone that does not have to play that game and can actually serve the people.
Right.
And
And have
it'll
you
be
had a
up to-
chance to look at the demographics of the district?
I have, and I'm not a politician.
Okay.
They're people, so
Good.
the demographics to me, I looked at them, but I don't pay any attention to them because I think we all want the same things. So,
Because I saw something that was in one of your videos
okay.
that I remark about, because I think it's the place to put it in. You talk about your interest, or want to espouse grounded common sense.
Yes. And that's, we've been going over, and just like it's, what produces results for us. And a little bit between both of these parties, and they both have equal blame in this. There has been no common sense, just practical applications of problem solving in Congress. It's always some grand scheme, some centrally grand scheme. They make up the idea, it doesn't work, and the excuse becomes, we need more money. And we just keep throwing more money at the same problems over and over again, not looking at what results do these solutions provide. And if they don't produce results, getting rid of them. I mean, getting rid of a government agency or a government program, let's be honest, a government program is the closest thing we'll ever know to eternity while being here on Earth.
I believe that. Now, you have it well laid out on your website, and I do
you.
say, everybody, please look at his website
Thank you.
about what you think of as your key issues, your most important issues, and some strategies. We do have 10 or 15 minutes to talk about that. So if you could start with maybe what you feel are the first 2 or 3 most important ones, and if we have time, we'll get to 1 or 2 more.
Okay.
And otherwise, then people can just go to your website and pick the rest of it up.
That's true.
Okay.
Biggest one I said is we all want good quality public services. The question becomes, where do they come from and how do we pay for them? So it all starts with taxes and spending. Okay, it's chicken and the egg. When you said some common sense, I was at a candidate forum where one of the candidates said they wanted to bring science to Congress. And I wanted to stand up and just say, I'd settle for reading, writing, and arithmetic, just some basic arithmetic. $4.1 trillion in spending is higher, does not equal $3.6 trillion in revenue.
Right.
So we do not have no resource. A resource, by definition, does not exist where it can meet an inexhaustible demand. There's a limited. They're all finite. So our resources of our combined tax dollars, they're not endless. So we have to do the best that we can in providing all these services that we want. We also have to decide which services that government can provide or which ones the private sector can provide. So we have to, at some point, get spending under control. Because what we're doing currently, and what the Congress has done for ages, is we are mortgaging the futures of our future generations, our grandchildren, their children, to pay for what we want today. I mean, most people tell their kids, be frugal, don't spend away tomorrow, don't spend all your money away so that you'll have it when you get in older. But as a nation, we do the exact opposite. So we have to get spending in control. Once we get spending, and I would move and advocate for limiting government spending to 10% of the actual GDP. Cap it there. Then we know what we can spend. And we can, our tax system, I'm not a big fan of a progressive tax system. May I remind everyone that it's one of the tenets of the Communist Manifesto, is a progressive tax.
What about a flat tax?
I'm okay with a flat tax.
Okay.
I'm okay with a flat tax, a fair tax. I would even entertain even though it's not my first choice, a national sales tax. And the reason I say that is because anytime we make the goods and services we buy more expensive, who ends up paying that bill? We do. So I lean mostly towards a flat tax, and I like that idea the best out of them. So once we figure out spending and we say, okay, this is what we're going to spend.
The 10% cap.
The 10% cap. And just to give you an idea, and the people and I did, this isn't such a out there idea.
Or it's not science fiction.
It's not science fiction. Very good, yes. Is last year, our gross domestic product was almost $19 trillion. So there's $2 trillion of spending right there. It may go up with the way the economy is going now, but our resources are limited, so we have to do the best that we can with them. Now, once we can get some kind of taxation and spending a little better under control, I haven't even mentioned the debt, and that's a whole nother story. But every $20 trillion, but in truth, it's over $100-something trillion with the unfunded cost. But we have to do the best that we can with the resources that we have. So where do we put those resources? We should put those resources, like I said earlier, with whoever uses them in the most efficient, effective, and responsible way, whether that be the private sector or government. Now, the case is very strong for the fact that government doesn't do a very good job at any of those things. I think you can go a myriad of programs just looking at history itself. So I'm not advocating for government to provide all those services, although I am not trying to make the ideological argument that government should not be allowed to be in the market to provide those services.
Do you advocate for a smaller government?
I advocate for a smaller guy. I think it'll naturally happen, in truth. If we open up whatever service it is, the government, I'm not 100%, I don't hate government, even though a couple of the candidates have accused me of that.
Okay.
It's not that I hate government. I think government has a defined and role in our society. But it's not the role that it currently plays of trying to provide everything to everyone. If we want the most resources and services to us, then we have to have a common sense way of sending our resources to those who do better with them. And that may not be, and in many cases will not be, the government. But I'm not saying that it can't be the government. If the government wants to provide and be the gold standard in whatever it is, then let it compete in the market with everyone else at the same rules, even playing field for everybody to try to compete to give those goods and services. The key to it is having us, the individual citizen, having the ability to direct those resources towards who does it better, and not the government just saying, hey, we tried to provide this resource, we spent $1 trillion in doing it, we can't tell you what the results are, so we're going to need another $1 trillion to do it. No, the key is to you and I having the ability to direct those resources. One of the main pieces of legislation that I plan on sponsoring, and it's from a group called We Do Better. I ask you to check them out. They do a great job. Some states have it. It can be down to the county level, the state level. Obviously, I would be advocating for it at the federal level. What it does is it allows us, the citizens, to have a small say over a piece of the budget, meaning that whatever Congress agrees, I'm going to use some example figures here, but let's say for an individual $1,000 and a married couple $2,000. So let's say your federal tax liability is $5,000. Well, you can take $1,000 if you're single or $2,000 if you're married and send that money directly to a nonprofit or any organization in your community or state that provides a public service. So we can start. We didn't get to where we were at in 1 year, 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, 20. It's been many decades. Right. But this is a small piece, one piece of ground that we can slowly start to get control over some of these resources and direct them to where they need to be. And I think if the more and more we do this and the more and more we hold government accountable to results, the less and less of services that the government will end up providing, or the other will become true and they'll actually become efficient at providing those services. Either way, we the citizens win and get what we truly want and what we want as a society. 90% of the congressmen never read any of the bills that they pass. So how about them being required, not only required, but have to sign an actual affidavit saying that they read the bill if they're going to vote yes on the bill, and require the bill to be read in Congress. Also, I support legislation that requires Congress to write its own bills, because that rarely happens in Congress. Those special interest groups and the lobbying groups that I mentioned earlier, they write the biggest majority of bills that go through our Congress.
Because, I mean, holding your public officials accountable, because you're saying not only do they may not read the bill, because we've had a guy in here who kind of puts in plain language a lot of the healthcare policy so congressmen can understand it, which means they don't read it the way it's written, and they may only get, again, just a little piece of that, but he sort of dumbs it down for them. And as you were saying too, about not necessarily knowing what they're voting for, it's that whole thing of, I was told to vote for this, or the party said, this is what, and I'm just pushing a button. I'm not doing any thinking. I'm not really representing my constituents.
No, exactly. And, most of them, like I said, when she held up the bill and said, to find out what it's in it, we're going to have to pass it. But I have, even in some of these forums that I've been in, the candidate forums that I've been in, I've seen some of the other candidates when a question is put out, they're reaching and flipping up a little folder, and I've seen the talking points that they're reading from. Why do you think every candidate sounds almost the same? Because they all get the same talking points. And when they get to Congress, they spend most of their time fundraising anyway. This is no secret. I mean,
Of course.
Yeah, everybody knows.
Especially in the House.
In the
because
House.
every 2 years you have to be reelected.
Yes.
So you're fundraising from day one all the way through day 730, the very last day.
And that's going to be true of either the Democrat or Republican if they win this election. That will not happen for only at least one of the candidates that I know of, and that would be me.
Okay.
I would be the party leadership. I have no party that I'm beholden to.
You'd be a caucus of one.
A caucus of one. Not only that, but I do all my own research.
Okay, good.
Right or wrong, it's you can ask any of my family members that are around me, any issue you hear me talk about, I have done dozens of hours of research on, as much as I can get my hands on. And this just didn't start now. I've had a finger on politics and an interest in it since I was 18. But it has over the last year and a half since I've decided to throw my hat in this ring. Right. I do it myself. So I don't have, in Congress, the bill gets written by an outside group, lobbyist or some special interest, gets passed on, and a whole bunch of money gets handed around. The staffers there in the congressional office say, this is the way you want to vote on it. This is your talking points on it.
Right.
So you're right. You're absolutely right.
So for you, what voters could know is you're somebody, if you're elected to Congress, your vote will be an informed one on any given issue.
Cost, when government says it's going to control the cost of health care, what does that mean? They're just going to tell the doctors that they can only charge so much, or a stethoscope only can cost so much? Maybe, yeah, they're going to say that, but what they really do behind closed doors is negotiate those prices. But they can't control that. But you and I can through the simple mechanism of prices, and all prices do is coordinate those types of things where those resources get directed, how much of those resources are used. I would encourage everyone to read the book. He's a part of the Milton Friedman School of Economics, but his name is Dr. Thomas Sowell, and he wrote a wonderful book called Basic Economics.
Basic Economics.
And if we don't even teach that in high school, so how do we understand? And I would guarantee you, and I know just from listening to some of the congressmen and some of the candidates I've heard, neither do they. We we expect if you take the federal budget and spending and divide it by 535, it comes out to about $7.1 billion per congressman.
Wow.
And when each one of them, on average, is expected, that's roughly what they're kind of responsible for in spending. And they have to spend it on everything from healthcare to infrastructure to everything. Well, most of them are attorneys to start with. So they're spending 7.1. Who can spend $7.1 billion effectively? Not our Congress, because we wouldn't be in the shape that we are now. So the economy, everything, returning power, the power to control that back into the hands of the individual, removing government's intrusion into that, and allowing the citizens more and more choice, more and more control. Remember I told you earlier,
Right.
where those resources go, the fundamental key to that is you and I having that ability to direct those resources.
Right. Because, I mean, that is a theme you've brought up, and I'm sure it's part of your take probably on the libertarian point of view, is choice,
Yes,
and the choice of the voter.
yes,
And what I have told voters here and people watching our channel, that they are the most important person really in the government, but they've forgotten that. And the best voter is an informed voter.
yes,
And so I would say that's kind of what you're advocating, bringing back that choice.
yes.
And so what I'm going to have to ask you to do now is just make a brief closing statement, and at the end of it, tell people your contact information.
Okay. Choice and being an informed voter is very important. There are some of these candidate forums you can go to, but what I found out is you're only going to get about 8 to 10 minutes in broken intervals of hearing people. So if you want to be informed, I would say come to some of the town halls that we do. I will be doing them in libraries all throughout the district. You'll see advertisements for them on Facebook, my webpage. And you can look at my webpage at www.electkevincaldwell.com. You can look me up for Kevin Caldwell for Congress on Facebook. And I'm going to be doing, in fact, I'm going to be doing 2 this month with other candidates for offices too. So you won't just have to hear me talk for 30 minutes or an hour. But it's to give the citizens more than just that little soundbite. You know, politics is soundbite politics. That's what it's turned into. So if you want to find out in depth about all these things, and come to some of these town halls, look me up on the internet. Send me an email. I'll answer your question. Actually, if you send me an email and you want to have a phone conversation, I'll come meet with 2 people, 5 people, 20 people.
Terrific.
It is my goal to reach as many people as possible. But to become an informed voter, look for more than just the sound bites or the commercials you're going to see on TV. Come meet some of the candidates, because I know myself, and I know the other candidates do it too.
You do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as I would say, and as I would tell people, I wanted to get this in my my conversation this evening, that a great American philosopher, as far as I'm concerned, once said something like, you know, I don't let any of the formal learning I've gotten get in the way of my education. And that was Mark Twain.
Okay.
And so that's what we're saying. Be informed. Look at Kevin's website. Get a chance to reach out to him, especially if you're in his district. And so right now, folks, it's been great. We'll probably have him back if he wants to come back. And it's a long way till November. And until next time, this has been Maryland Politics, and good night.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.